Good morning. It is Wednesday, July 12, 2023. This is your Clark County Council meeting in Washington, in Clark County, Washington. We are really busy with a busy agenda today, starting with a couple of work sessions and eventually having council time and so on. So I would like to begin by asking staff if there are any changes, well, not just staff, counselors too. Are there any changes to the agenda?
So the only thing Chair, if I can, so we do have the two work sessions this morning, one that starts at 1:30 followed by council time. So there's 4 different agendas and 4 different meetings this morning. We can gauge timing as we get to council time. And if needed, we can look at moving the 179th update to a work session on August 8th. Just to put that in your mind this morning as you're going through the day, and then we can have that discussion at the beginning of council time.
And how about the 1:30 work session, Kathleen?
I have been told that they're supposed to keep it within 30 minutes, even though there were several slides, but we did update I believe, the agenda online to say that council time will be following that work session rather than starting at 2 o'clock. So that was updated.
Okay, well, that part is good. From my own personal perspective, I would just say that allowing a designated period of time, whether it be half an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, for the classification and compensation study is not enough because there is quite a bit to present and there is quite a bit to discuss. That's my perspective. So I think when we get to that point in the agenda, we need to be very cognizant of making sure that we have sufficient time to discuss and understand what is found in that compensation study. So with that, we turn it over to the Southwest Washington Workforce Economic Analysis people who worked, the staff who worked with this topic, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Council Member Bowerman. Appreciate it. And thank you, Sue, for your invitation to us. And thank you to all for having us here this morning. We're excited to share what we do with you. Some of you may be familiar with us and some not so much. Of course, thank you, Sue, for your service to us on our board and the guidance that you provide to us. We really appreciate it. So I'm Marnie Farnes. I'm Director of Programs with Workforce Southwest Washington. We call ourselves WSW for short. So if you hear me referring to us as WSW, you know why. And then this is my colleague here to my left, Darcy Hoffman, and Darcy is Director of Business Services with WSW as well. All right. So super excited to talk about, in a sense, the world of economic development. Workforce development plays a huge role, as we know, in economic development. And things don't just fall into place by chance. It really takes people behind the scenes working and strategizing and partnering and planning and analyzing. And, you know, that is definitely something that takes time and effort and intentionality. And so we're going to spend the next 30 minutes with you this morning sharing a little bit about what we do and how workforce plays a role in the big picture here in Clark County. So just to get started, as we know, companies need workers, and workers need jobs. They need companies. That's not a surprise, I know, to anybody. And so a lot of what we do is really bringing those two realities together. Excuse me. So WSW, just to get us started, we lead the public workforce system in Clark, Cowlitz, excuse me, and Wahkiakum counties. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're the local workforce board. And since 2002, we have spent over $126 million in supporting businesses to get workers and to train workers, and also to train workers to secure jobs in our community. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, and I think I did already, that we are the local workforce board for Clark, Cowlitz, and Wahkiakum counties. So if I'm repeating myself, my apologies. So we fund programs and activities that prepare youth and adult workers really for living wage jobs. And we also consult with businesses to recruit, train, and retain workers. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the essence of what we're about. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we focus on business and we focus on job seekers. And we oversee the local workforce system here. And so just to get us started, when I say the local workforce system, the question that comes up a lot is, what does that mean? And in a nutshell, it really means in the world of workforce development, there's a lot of players, there's a lot of providers, and then of course you've got businesses. We've got WorkSource and other employment centers in our community. We have youth providers like the Next Youth Center, K-12 and higher education providers, and other training providers. Of course, I mentioned businesses. We have community-based organizations, folks who work with individuals with disabilities, reentry. We have our economic development partners, and then we've got other local workforce boards in the area, over in the Portland area. And all of this list that I just mentioned are, and there's more, this is just a small list really, but we're all working on workforce. And so you've got all of these pieces out there working towards a similar aim. And so our role in this is to convene, to collaborate, to strategize, and bring some order to all of that. Go ahead, next slide, please. And so as I touched on, we have some other local workforce boards over in the Portland area that we do a lot of work with. Darcy here is going to talk more about them in just a moment. But just to say really quick, we share a labor shed over with Portland and the Portland metro area, I should say. And so it makes sense that we would work with those who do similar work to us over there. And we do a lot of collaboration with them. Of course, we have individuals here that commute over there for work and vice versa. There's a lot of overlap with business and industry, so it just makes good sense. And oftentimes we will apply for funding with our partners over there. And we also work closely with the other workforce boards throughout the state. There's 12 local workforce boards statewide in the state of Washington. We are one of them. And so, for example, right now we're applying for the Good Jobs Challenge with South Central Workforce and Spokane, applying for funding to get folks trained up for healthcare and construction occupations. So we do work with the other workforce boards. Thank you. Next slide. And so our mission, vision, and values really, of course, just like any organization, is the driving force behind what we do. And our aim really is to lead a regional workforce development system where every individual has access to high quality employment and every business has access to skilled workers. And for the ultimate goal of creating a region where economic prosperity and growth exists for every person. So that's our North Star. Our values drive us, of course. Just really quickly, we aim for equitable access to employment for every individual in our community. Of course, we value diversity, and diversity comes in many different forms. But we do believe that we're stronger when we have representation from all backgrounds and value systems and, rural and urban coming together. We also aim for an inclusive workplace environment here in our community. And of course, innovation and collaboration are also very important to us. And so, go ahead, next slide. As I mentioned, we serve businesses and we serve job seekers, not directly, but our focus is on business and workers. So just to touch real quick, Darcy is going to talk more about business in just a moment. We focus on 4 sectors: construction, healthcare, manufacturing, and tech. And we serve businesses really in a way to aim to strategize in such a way where they can increase their success in attracting, retaining, and upskilling workers. And so, as I mentioned, Darcy will delve more into that in just a moment. Go ahead, next slide. And so on the other side of the equation are job seekers. And so our goal really is to promote equity for every individual in our community by providing access to high quality employment and advancement opportunities. And so we are funded as an organization primarily through federal dollars and state dollars, but we also do receive funding from local government and also private. So we take those dollars and we pour them back out into the community, primarily through the WorkSource Center, Next Youth Center, some community organizations, and also higher education partners. We have programs within Clark College and WSUV here in Clark County. And so with those community partners doing this work on our behalf, they primarily serve adults and out-of-school youth. And often we have a focus on priority populations, so it would be minority and underrepresented community members, individuals with disabilities. Of course, we know that we have an influx right now and a need to serve refugee populations. We are just closing out a program where we focused on helping those with opioid use disorder, or who have been impacted by it, rather. And then, of course, those who have experienced involvement with the justice system or reentry. I have a little asterisk by that because that's something that we are right now trying to plan more for and find new ways, or I should say ways to fund that program, because obviously it's a big need. Next slide. Our investment dollars. So we get these dollars and we put them, they come through us and we strategize in a way and we send them out into the community. And primarily those dollars are used for employment and training. And what that looks like really is career coaching and mentorship. So you have individuals that come in, I'm unemployed, I've never worked, I'm recently unemployed. There could be a whole host of scenarios. And so they come in, and it might be that they just need career coaching and mentoring, and that's available for them. Or it could be that they need skill development or education to get to secure a family wage job. It might be the case that they can just go right into employment, but they need some assistance with on-the-job training. We can help pay for that. And then sometimes we can help pay for supportive services, what we call supportive services. So perhaps somebody's going into construction, they need steel-toed boots. Sometimes we can help pay for that if the situation is right. And so our goal really is to get people working and to get to make that connection between job seekers and business. And so another big area of focus for us really are on strategic efforts and projects and initiatives. And Darcy here is going to share now about a big project she's been working on for the last few years called our Quality Jobs Initiative.
Cool. Thanks, Marnie. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm kind of loud, so I don't want to blow your eardrums out with this microphone. Hi, everyone. I'm Darcy Hoffman. I'm the Director of Business Services at WSW. And if you'll flip to the next slide, great. I'm going to dig into our quality jobs strategy and framework here for you a little bit. I think today we're really just going to have time to scratch the surface on it, but I hope that it opens up for, more discussions in the future where we can dig into certain elements. And before I start, Marnie talked a little bit about our partnership with the workforce boards in Portland and Clackamas. I want to give you just a bit more context on that because it is a formal partnership that we've had with them for more than a decade now. So we're working a lot with Work Systems, the workforce board serving Washington and Multnomah counties in Portland, and then Clackamas Workforce Partnership, Clackamas County obviously, and us. So together we're the Columbia-Willamette Workforce Collaborative, which is such a mouthful, so you'll probably hear me say CWWC or maybe even more often the collaborative. This is that partnership that I'm referring to. Like Marnie said, we've worked together for more than a decade, and really what guides us is we're there to serve businesses together, to support economic development in the region together, and to help guide our public workforce investments together as a labor shed by state, 6-county region. Since our inception, we have been able to secure over $60 million in federal workforce funding to help support businesses and people and job growth in our communities. So we are a lot more competitive together, and I think there's a big advantage to business to our partnership as well. Because we're able to create talent in a more consistent way, whether you're someone who might be accessing training through a community college in Oregon or Washington. We sort of know what all businesses need in our region and can work together to make that happen. Largely, we focus on 4 high-growth, high-demand sectors in our region. So it's healthcare, manufacturing, technology, and construction. We have really active industry-led advisory boards for each one of those sectors that span the bi-state 6-county region. We meet with them regularly to understand what's sort of top of mind for workforce development for them. We work with them to create a workforce strategic plan that the workforce boards then use to really help shape our day-to-day work and our investments to ensure that they align with the things that those industries need. So all that to dig into job quality. So in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, we started hearing a lot about conversations happening nationally around job quality and started to explore that. So we explored a lot of models taking shape around the country to think about and learn from what might work well here. And started working on a framework and a strategy from that point. So since then, we have actually launched our framework and strategy, which I'll dig into in a moment with you all. And then the Department of Labor actually came out and put a stake in the ground this time last year and launched their Good Jobs Initiative. Department of Commerce has something similar. We were first, just saying, but the good news is, if you look at all of these organizations' frameworks, we all use different words, I think, to describe what's important in terms of job quality to people, and we're saying the same thing. So this is good. There's a lot of alignment with the programs that are taking shape, both federally and locally. As we developed our framework, we did a ton of work to engage the community and to understand what's important to people here in Clark County and throughout the region in terms of job quality. And then we formed a very short-term quality jobs council that really helped us develop the framework. And that's important because it was about 25 or so members representing private sector, labor, public administration, our community-based organizations, and workers. Came together, they're the ones that really ultimately landed on what the standards and strategies will be for or are for our region, and I'll get into those in a moment. It's also closely aligned with the regional comprehensive economic development strategy provided through Greater Portland, Inc. The collaborative is named as the lead partner in fleshing out a job quality strategy. So we're committed to seeing this work through. We are committed to implementing the framework and the strategies inside of our own organizations as small employers in the region, through doing what we can through our investments to influence job quality, and also, and maybe most importantly, to work with businesses to help them understand things that they can do to make jobs better for their current and future workers. So, we can go to the next slide. So the purpose and objectives. So first and foremost is the framework and the strategies prioritize workforce equity. This was the biggest glaring thing that stood out to all of us, I think, during the pandemic, and it's that women and people of color were really disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So first and foremost, the framework and strategies are meant to elevate that workforce equity component. Second, we want to ensure that our region's workforce system is preparing and supporting customers to transition into really high quality jobs. And I will just say that, you know, historically, organizations like us, workforce boards, this is what we do. We invest in helping people build skills to get good jobs. And typically, we're able to fund programs for people as long as the job is in demand in our region, and ensuring that we're incorporating the customer's voice. You know, what do they want to do? What do they want to be when they grow up? And I think that the strategy and framework is taking that just one step further to really ensure that we're giving good, solid advice to people so that they are prepared to transition into careers that will offer self-sufficiency. And I would say even self-sufficiency is almost the bottom of the barrel. Like, we want more for people than just being able to get by. We want people to, you know, have savings accounts and be able to buy homes and take vacations and do all the things that they want to do in life. So it's really above and beyond just self-sufficiency for this strategy. We also are elevating our partners and our companies who are already doing such great work to make jobs better for people in the community. But that's a big part of the strategy, is we want to be able to tell the stories of the employers in our community and make sure that the public knows the great work that companies have embarked on to make things better for people. And then lastly, to provide a blueprint for companies to make improvements in their workforce. So the strategy is organized around 6 job quality standards, which you'll see on the next slide. And then each one offers a series of strategies and interventions that companies can implement, kind of depending on what's important to them and to their business, maybe in the moment, what's most pressing for them. But so strategies organized around the standards. And the last thing I want to say on this slide is, well, actually, no, I lied. 2 last things I want to say on this slide. The strategies are not just aimed at businesses. They're also strategies in there directly aimed at workforce boards, at policymakers, at our community-based organizations, at our labor partners. Making jobs better for people in our community, everyone has, I think, a little piece of that pie, and there's something that we can all be working on. And that it is intended to be very inclusive of all businesses. So while as a workforce board, we focus a lot on those 4 high growth, high demand sectors that I mentioned, there are certainly strategies in the framework that we feel anyone can implement, from, you know, the coffee shop on the corner through a major healthcare institution. It's really aimed to include all businesses, and I believe there are things that we can all do as employers to make jobs better for people no matter who we are. Okay, so let's go to the next slide and we'll look at the standards really quick. So these will come as no surprise to you if you've been following any job quality work from around the country, but it's self-sufficiency wages, safe working conditions and worker engagement, worker voice, predictable work hours, comprehensive benefits, accessible hiring and onboarding practices, and then training and advancement opportunities. And there's just a picture of the front page of the framework on the screen. That document is 70-some pages long and is not intended, well, it could be, but not intended as a tool for any one company to take and feel like they need to understand how to implement everything on their own. That's what we're here for, is to help them figure out maybe where to start and what strategies might work best for them to start with. So that might be something we dig into potentially in a future conversation, is to dig more into the actual standards and some of the strategies that go into improving those standards. So that's all I have on job quality in this presentation, but I would just put out there that it really just barely scratches the surface on everything that we're doing around improving job quality. We've already done a lot as a workforce board to change what our investments look like in the community, to help make sure that our subrecipients, our community organizations, WorkSource, that they're doing everything that they can to make sure that the people we're investing in are getting the very best jobs. We've also done a lot, first and foremost, like internal work with WSW as who we are as an employer, albeit small. I think we have about 18 employees. We have made a ton of improvements and changes to who we are as an employer to make sure that we're really walking the walk and doing things better for the people that we employ as well. So there's a lot there. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, and I think other presenters may touch on this today, you touched on it a little bit, is construction and infrastructure. So everybody knows there are a number of enormous federally publicly funded projects that are underway right now and that are on the horizon in the future. And all that to say that we just have an incredible opportunity right now to make sure that our residents of Clark County are able to successfully compete and have equitable opportunities for these jobs. Because one thing that's fantastic about construction that we really don't have to work on as much with job quality is wages. So these jobs on these projects can be life-changing for the people who live here. And as a workforce board, I think that's paramount for us, that our residents are ready and able to have equal access to those jobs. So I just want to get that on your radar. That's going to take a lot of collaboration and partnership through our investments, through all workforce investments, work with our community partners, our labor partners, our pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, our contractors, but we just have an amazing opportunity on the horizon for us right now with these projects coming online. And the last thing that I will add, we are working in very close partnership with the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program team, and are working on a workforce assessment to understand strengths and weaknesses and recommend some, potential promising practices that our region can implement. We don't have a signed contract with them for this work, so I think this might be another good opportunity where maybe we can come back in the future and give you a better update specific to that project. So I think that's the last slide. And I think we're almost at time. We were hoping to leave a little bit of time to maybe open up a conversation with you all, but if you have any last words.
No, I just thank you again for providing the opportunity for us to share with you. And really, I just kind of want to double underline what I said at the beginning of the presentation, which is the work we do, the work of workforce development and economic development. There's so much overlap. And ultimately, the goal is for Clark County to be the most prosperous, of course, that it can be for individuals. Because even when you take businesses, businesses are made up of individuals. So ultimately, it's for all of our prosperity and well-being. And so none of this just happens by chance. And so I just really wanted to kind of throw that in there and mention that, you know, we really need your partnership and support, as Darcy mentioned, so perhaps we can come back and share more updates with you in the future.
Really quickly, I looked at your agenda for this morning, and I see that you all as a county are looking at pay equity at some point, maybe this morning or later this afternoon. That was one of the first things that we did as an organization at WSW, was to do a pay equity analysis and make right sizes where we needed to make right sizing and change things to make sure, you know, there aren't disparities ever again. I want to commend you on at least having that conversation and exploring it. Those are the types of stories that we want to be able to elevate to the community, so the community knows of employers like the county who are working on really important improvements like that when it comes to job quality. So I did just want to say that.
Chair?
Yes.
Oh,
Counselor?
I'd like to make I have a comment and a question. I'd just like to thank you both. You know, when I was assigned to serve on the board, I knew very little about workforce development, and have come to learn that it's a wonderful, tremendous resource. And, you know, economic development is something that this council, I think we all agree, is what we want, and the workforce is a fundamental component of it. So the work that you do is really appreciated. The other topic that we'll be looking at this morning is employment forecasts, and as it applies to land use. So you might be interested in listening to that as well. And the one thing that really compelled me to ask this council if they would invite you to come and speak to us was related to the bridge and the economic impact, and really making sure that this community is prepared, that our local folks are able to benefit from that tremendous project that's coming forward. So I'd be really interested in what the timeline might be for that and having more specific information.
Quick timeline. I mean, I think we can come back and talk about more specifics, I mean, even as soon as like the next month, but to finish the project of the workforce analysis by the end of the calendar year. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I'm going to segue off that last comment. I've got a lot. And segueing off, I'm hoping we are sincerely moving towards economic development for all of Clark County here on this council. We have some development regulations sitting in abeyance for the last 5 years for our railroad right now. That could be a real economic engine. And to that, I'm hoping we do pass them with alacrity and move forward with our development corridor along our railroad. So my question in that area specifically is, how do you do workforce assessment? I mean, within those development regulations, we kind of see the right and left limit of what businesses we're hoping to attract. Of course, we don't know what businesses we will attract, but assuming we move forward with alacrity in adopting those, what does your organization do to assess, okay, from here's the skill sets we need within the county that, boy, we may be short of right now, all the way to laborers? I mean, how does that workforce assessment work? And are you looking at our railroad? Are you looking at those issues yet?
Good question. So I can tell you with the analysis that we're doing specifically for the IBR, we are modeling it after a study that our Work Systems, our workforce board partner in Portland, did with Metro a few years back. So the approach that we're taking is we're starting actually with the supply and really digging into who our supply is here in this region. And once we have a better understanding of who the potential supply is, then we'll move on to trying to better understand really what the demand is for the jobs on the bridge. For example, we know all the trades it will take to build a bridge. We don't exactly yet know how many and at what time in the project. So then we will move on to better understanding the demand, and then I think we'll have a much clearer picture of where we have strengths and where we're gonna have some gaps, and can then make some recommendations on what we can all do to help shrink those gaps. And I think a similar approach would work for what you're talking about with the rail. And your last question, are we looking at that yet? No, but I would be happy to if we could have maybe another conversation about that.
Super. So let me continue on. So the depth and breadth of what we just saw you do, I'm like, oh my God, how did they do it? Because there's so much, and so I'm taking down notes and going, they could solve so many problems for Clark County in so many areas, and I'm going to touch on a few specific ones. And I apologize. I know Sue and I are just in the midst of a grant round right now. I think you put in for one. Okay, I see a positive nod. There are so many dozens.
I know.
But here's what I want to say. You know, from our homeless, those who are about to be homeless, you know, the connectivity, because I know you weren't overly inclusive on the list that you put up here, but, you know, we have a brand new community court. Oh my gosh, it would be great if you had a plug in there. You know, and I saw you had a little asterisk near on reentry on jail services, and I don't know where we're at yet with our own rebuilding of our reentry program, but what a key central focus to be able to have a robust reentry program from labor positions to all the way to apprenticeship programs. And what a challenged population, you know, anyone coming out of the jail, you know, with convictions or not, or felony convictions or not, people don't want to hire them. And what a huge challenge. And so despite the grant round you just submitted for, you know, this is such an important singular standalone project for our county at our jail. You know, it would be worthwhile if you have something you're ready to tee off on right now, submit the idea, and maybe we can have a separate ARPA grant just for that, because it fits so closely with what we're trying to do at our jail and will impact so many in a positive way, from recidivism, law and order, you name it, you know, community court, probation department, you know, there's a federal vocational training program for veterans. Are you tapped into that? What is the connectivity with our union apprenticeship programs, those formalized schools right across the river and elsewhere? I mean, do you have plug-ins with all these organizations? So let me see if there's anything else here. Oh, you know, I mentioned Council for the Homeless, but we have separate operators for the city of Vancouver, and there's Safe Stay, you know, Outsiders In and others. Are you working with them? Because, you know, everything, you know, the Talk and Trash program, it starts somewhere. And if you have a salary coming in, and hopefully with better quality salaries eventually, I mean, we would be solving so many societal problems. And we just had an ECHO meeting yesterday, and a root problem is affordability. And, you know, as we do our best to make things affordable, boy, that's the holy grail, and we may not be able to reach. But if we can improve people getting jobs, getting some salary, and then getting higher salary, we can start solving some of those issues of people on the margin. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but your slides show that you're kind of doing this across the board, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many of you are there? Because
Yes. Well, and thank you for that. That's exactly right. And almost all of those names that you just threw out there, yes, we are working with all of them. And that's exactly, you're making my point. That's exactly what I was trying to say earlier, and that is there's all these players And so they're doing work, they're doing work, they're doing work. And so really, you have to have an organization like ours, bringing those partners together to have these conversations. And we just applied for another round of funding to support those impacted by opioid use disorder. And so when I was applying for that in early May, had some great conversations with the folks at the jail that, at least before the program was paused, did that work. And so we were able to get a letter of support from them, and we carved out the beginnings of a plan for us to get some of our employment specialists that are currently working at the WorkSource Center to come and partner with those who are doing this work in the jail to begin that type of program. So yes, these are conversations that we are having, and I love that you asked everything that you asked, because this is why we do this work. And you know, I spent a number of years in economic development, and so I love seeing how the pieces all are there, and it just really takes intentionally bringing them together. And so we, and Darcy of course mentioned that with the bridge and then post-pandemic, things are shifted in a lot of different ways, and we really are at a great place where we can really make things happen. And so those partners, yes, that's the long way of saying yes. We are working with them, and definitely can use all of your support as we move forward.
Thank you very much. That concludes my questions and comments, Madam
I
Chair.
have a couple of question or comments perhaps that I would just like to make relative to future dialogue that we have. I think with the economic analysis that you've provided us, there are a couple of ways to go forward. One is somewhat theoretical, and the other one is more numeric. I would like to see more emphasis in the future on the numeric. Now, let's just take the I-5 bridge as an example. There are a boatload, and that's no pun intended, of numerics that are already out there on the I-5 bridge and the labor that will be necessary in order to build what is going to be needed. But where do we sit as a county in terms of being able to offer what is needed? Where do we sit relative to being able to train what is needed in order to fill the gaps? Those are numeric things that we really need to know in order to have impact. And I would like to see some emphasis there. We have this discussion regularly with CDEC, which is our Community Import-Export Council, as you well know. And we ask them all the time, please emphasize the numbers, because it is then that we know what jobs you are providing to the community via the organizations that are being recruited to come here. So it can go on in terms of really having a meaningful impact. The more that we know specifically about, as I call it, the numerics, about what is planned, who is going to be the provider, and how is it going to be pulled off. I mean, I know that we've got partnerships and we talk all the time about having partnerships. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that one partner provides 5% of the jobs for the I-5 bridge, or 10% or 20%, or what does that mean? And what jobs are those? So let's get specific, because when we get specific, I think we can do better and better in understanding and meeting the needs of the community. So that's my take for where we go in the future.
Chair? Oh,
Yes, go
did you have
ahead.
Actually, it looks like there was a response coming.
I was just going to say thank you and noted. In fact, when I looked at the agenda for today that was published online, I thought, ooh, I hope we didn't miss the mark with what we prepared for today. Just looking at how data-driven some of your other presentations will be. By the same token, I think it's important for you all to understand who we are and what we do first. But noted and thank you, and if you'll have us back, I think we can come back prepared with more data to help you digest and to help us look at potential solutions for our community.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you coming today. It's very clear that you care about our community. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Marnie on the board of the Haug Neighborhood Association. So it's a pleasure to do that. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I do look forward to a further conversation. And what I would love to have is specific direction from you on what we can change, what we have the availability and the ability to control that could make things better in our community. And I just wanted to piggyback on the conversation that we had earlier with homelessness. It's time that we stop treating the symptoms and time that we start working on real solutions. And one of that is developing stable income for individuals to be able to afford housing in our community. So thank you so much. I look forward to working more with you in the future.
Just thanks again.
Thank you all.
And next we turn to our second work session of the day, which is an employment projection